10.
Yo,
Hey, is 10 in here, bro? We're gonna be.
He's right there. He's a BBC doctor.
what do you want to debate?
Okay. What topics do you do, man?
I mean, it doesn't really matter. If you have a proposition you want to defend, we can do it.
Do you do fiction? Do you do IRL? I would rather do fiction, but I'm fine with doing IRL as well. I'll do any topic.
If you have a proposition you want to defend, you can defend.
Yeah, I'll take comp femto versus comp fiction outside of femto.
What do you mean by that?
I'll take my character, namely comp femto. Composite femto is a femto with all versions relative to the character's essence versus comp fiction outside of that.
Yeah, like what proposition are you affirming within that?
I'm affirming that my character beats everybody within fiction outside of himself.
Okay.
Or he won't lose. My bad. Huh?
What?
Yeah, he won't lose against any character in fiction outside of himself.
You think that's a coherent win condition?
I never said I was a coherent win condition. The win condition is the premise. The premise is independent of the position. You told me to affirm a
I
proposition.
never
That's the
said you
proposition.
did. I said, do you think?
And then I answered the question. I said no.
Okay.
Or did he run away? It seems like he left the call again because he realized that he was going to have to debate me.
Nice, just good.
Okay, sure, okay. So are you disagreeing with what I said, or are you going to stay on mute and look at ChatGPT for a response? I'm talking to you, 10, if you didn't know.
So rhetorical.
All right, you could affirm.
You're such a cornball to where you have to intervene and help your friend stop talking, or else I'm leaving.
You asked me something, and now you're telling me to stop talking. You gotta relax.
I cannot hear you. I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about
You
somebody
talk,
else.
don't talk to your daddy like that. You better debate this nigga.
By the way,
Dialogue.
you stutter, by the way. As soon as you mic up, you stutter. Not you.
I don't care.
Not you, 10.
Listen.
Not you, 10. Not you, 10.
So listen.
But-
My bad. So listen.
You ain't talking to me, bitch.
Name your proposition.
It was definitely talking to you. But can y'all please control y'all specimens while I'm speaking to 10?
Oh, yeah, not gonna lie. And this,
Yeah, so
but
10, what you hold on, chill. What were you saying before you were really interrupted?
Affirm your proposition.
Yeah, so once again, I'm just saying that I believe my character will not lose against any other fictional character within fiction. When I say any other, that means independent of himself, obviously. And my character is comp femto. Hello?
So your character will not lose to anybody in fiction, right?
You only said that 10 times.
That's the relax. That's the universal claim about all of fiction, right? Just to confirm. Yes or no? I'm gonna take that as a yes, right? For some reason you went silent. So, okay, that's a universal quantifier over domain of fiction. I'm glad we clarified, right? So you said any fictional character. What exactly is the domain?
Any character which is imaginative, that's what a fictional character is. So I'm not sure what you mean by there.
Wait, hold
So
on.
can y'all please? I'm sorry. Can y'all please mute whoever that was who interrupted our conversation?
Yo, on God, we conclude. Let's conclude.
But anyways, the domain is talking about.
You think
I
that
can't
answers the
even
fucking
speak without
question?
getting
You
interrupted.
think that answers the fucking question?
bro, it's
I'm
genuine.
trying to
What did I
answer
just
the
ask you,
question, but I
Infinity?
keep on getting
Yo,
interrupted.
what did I
So
just?
Tensei,
What
can
did
you
I
please
just ask you?
moderate?
Can you
Yeah, I
repeat?
Tensei,
literally
can you
muted
please-
niggas right and left. Like,
Oh,
I-
wait, no. I'm
Can
not talking about the other people who are being weird and interrupting. I'm talking about the person I'm talking to. He's interrupting me.
Oh, this nigga.
Even though I get called a spur for some reason while I'm
Can
speaking
you
cordially.
recapitulate what I asked you?
But just to clarify real quick, the question was the following. What domain are you talking about? And I'm saying that I'm talking about the domain, at least for the quantification. I'm talking about a domain in which quantifies or instantiates these fictional characters. So whenever I make the claim that my character will not lose against these fictional characters, yes, is universally respective in reference to the domain of fictional characters, or in other words, imaginative figures. But just to clarify, the justification is going to be that my character is, or I apologize, possesses a form in which is abstract. So obviously it's going to be analytically true that there's an impossibility to lose against these characters. So the position is justified. Now I understand you want to rush towards conclusions because obviously the shorter the debate, obviously there's going to be a less of a chance for you to get a blunder pointed out. But can you please respond to the claim that was made?
All right, I'm unmuted. My bad. So listen, I don't think that was informative, right? All you did was widen the
It isn't
quantifier.
informative.
Okay, can you mute him while I talk now?
I
'Cause, like,
muted him, bro. I muted him.
Thank you, Sensei. Listen, I think you just conceded to the critical point that we were talking about. You just said, "Oh, it's analytically clear. There's a possibility to lose against these characters." Is that what you said? Please, I think that's what I heard.
Okay, so one, please mute him while I'm responding because I understand he's going to interrupt because that's what people like him do. Low tiers do that. One, tracking area. All right, my bad. Tracking area. Tracking error and blunder one. Never made the claim at all that it's analytically possible for him to lose. You fucking retard. You have to track. And yes, we're not on TikTok anymore, so I can say you're retard. It's the case that I said it's analytically true that it's impossible for my character to lose in virtue of his abstract nature. So that's one. Secondly speaking, you said I conceded, which is a very, very strong claim. So I want you to point out what position I named in which I went back on and hedged or dropped. I didn't see any concession there. Seemingly speaking, there was not even a point that you gave in which I agreed to. So I'm not sure what the concession is there, but can you please respond to the point? You tried to conclude, rush conclusions because you were getting slammed, and that didn't work out for you. Your voice is literally shaking. You're nervous as fuck. Nobody thinks you look good currently. That shitty ass profile.
All right, my bad. Okay, I will take back the fact that I thought you conceded. Wait, what happened? Okay, I will take back that I thought you conceded because I thought you said something, right? So the claim, it still stands on like the failed machinery, I'd say, because the machinery there, you're not fucking actually like cashing out. So you said it is analytically true that your character cannot lose in virtuality of his abstract nature, her abstract nature, whatever your character's gender is, right? So, okay, to interrogate that framework there, right? The first problem that I have is that you're invoking an analytical truth. And I would say an analytical truth is only like it only works relative to like a theory of meaning, right? Like the analytics there or the analytic relative to what semantics there. Like, what do you mean by that? Like a Frege sense of relations, or maybe like a Carnap framework definitions there, or like maybe some stipulative like rule inside of a fictional ontology. So, and the reason why I'm like, losing my breath is because I was yelling at that nigga Tensei, right? And so I was like pacing around my house, calling him this.
You should still not be out of breath from that shit, fat ass nigga. Like that ass.
I'm not fat. I'm dead. I can turn on my camera and I'm skinny as fuck. Let me do that real quick before I respond to the rest of you. Yeah, I don't know why this fat fucking duck ass nigga's talking to me. Anyways,
We're only gonna see his belly button.
I can't even turn my camera on.
See his belly button.
The video chat available for 25 years. So listen, anyways, you're a loser, nigga. So listen. Anyways,
can you please mute him, bro? Like, he just gave like.
Hold on, I'm not done. I'm not done. Wait. He got to insult me for fucking 10,000 years, and now I can't even fucking speak.
You're not insulting me, bro. You're just commenting on.
Mute him up.
You're just lying about your fitness.
Mute him up. Wait. You weren't insulting me. You weren't insulting me. Mute him up. Let me respond to the rest of his claims. Goodness gracious. All right, bro. Almost made me forgot what I was gonna say. Anyways, I named the first problem, right? If you're invoking the analytics truth, right? And like that's like. And what is analytic relative to what semantics there, right? I want you to clarify that. And the second problem I have is that you're invoking the modal force some modal talk there where you're saying, oh, you cannot lose, right? I think that's a necessity claim, right? Under which modality are you using? Logical necessity, conceptual necessity, or maybe like even further, right? Or some metaphysical rule about a virtuality, abstract nature, or whatever the fuck that means, right? So because like obviously different modal systems give different results as to what we're talking about there, obviously. I'd say like without any specific modal, without the specific modal shit there, like the modal talk that you're even addressing there, like the accessibility relation or whatever, like when you say impossibility to lose or just cannot lose, I think that's just an emphasis of bullshit there. And like the third problem I has is that when you say virtualities or it's by virtue of its abstract nature, like when you're using that as grounding, I'm not sure. Like that sounds like some form of like maybe a metaphysical layer, or maybe like you're talking about the ontology of your character or what the ontology your character operates in, right? I think that's fine, but like you also have to give me a bridge of that, right? Like what connects the abstract layer to all fictional characters across all narratives? I'd have to ask that question. And like why should characters from like even completely different ontologies, let's say I have a character, right, Goku, from a different ontology, even be bounded by that rule of that layer? Oh my goodness gracious. You can
mute him. So mute him, please. Don't just let him mute himself. Mute him. Secondly speaking, Tron, Tensei said he wasn't the one muting me.
Yes, true.
Yeah, Tensei said he wasn't the one muting me. Thank you. But one, I'm not engaging on the theory of meaning points, specifically the specific versions, because obviously ChatGPT didn't help you. Maybe you need Gemini Pro or something because you failed to actually acknowledge anything relevant for one. Secondly speaking, you're lying on your fitness, my nigga. You were yelling, 10 minutes ago and you're still out of breath? No, you're just shaking and you're nervous against me. Like, I understand you're debating me, but calm down. Thoroughly speaking, just to clarify, whenever I talk about abstractness, I'm just invoking the semantics in which is referential towards a being in which is atemporal and aspatial. So it means to say that they exist beyond the bounds of space and time, just to clarify. But another response, whenever I talk about how we cannot lose, that's just talking about a metaphysical and logical modality. And then you said there was failed machinery. I understand that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, so you're trying to give these vague points. That's what low tiers such as Jester does. You need to explain what failed machinery there is. If you're talking about modal machinery, there isn't any failed machinery. I'm not sure how that's going to be something which is substantiated, currently speaking. But I'm talking about logical modality and metaphysical modality. I understand you don't know what either of those two means, but obviously metaphysical modality isn't as concrete philosophically speaking. So whenever I talk about metaphysical modality, I'm talking about modality in reference to what's compatible and incompatible with the nature of some object X. So we're talking about the nature of the being. It's metaphysically impossible for Femto to lose because of the nature of his essence or the nature of his being. What that means to say is because he's abstract and atemporal, that means he cannot experience change. If he cannot experience change, that means that no character within fiction can interact with him. Therefore, obviously, it's the case that he cannot lose. Losing is temporal. It's a temporal status. So obviously that's going to be something which is trivial. Now, just to clarify for the analytical stuff, I was just saying that it's analytically true that he cannot lose in virtue of his possession, that being his abstract possession. And then how this will quantify and translate to all these other fictional verses, because you tried to talk about layering, which you know nothing about at all. This is something which is true. Necessarily speaking, he's necessarily abstract. It's the case in all possible worlds that he's abstract. So that includes the hypothetical world where there is, for example, Goku versus Comp Femto. But even if that were not the case, we're talking about this relativistic character, or we're talking about this relativistic character in which is abstract. This character has a feature in which is abstract. I believe that the feature is necessary when it comes to his essence. That's what I'm using. I'm using that specific version of the character. That's what's called Comp Femto. Therefore, from the hypothetical world, he will also be abstract. And the features don't change. The things in which are true of please mute divine lawyer. He has a lot of background noise, but the features in which are true of his abstractness does not change. And it's also the case that the impossibility to interact with this abstractness does not change at all, given what fiction is. So I need some justification as to why, one, there exists metaphysical change. Even if there does exist metaphysical change, I'm not sure why it would be something which is, depending on the definition, possible when it comes to interactive power with my abstract being. And then finally speaking, the reason why it's going to be something which translates to all fictional verses is because all fictional verses are fiction. Tautologically speaking, fiction is imagination. There's no evidence, seemingly speaking, as to why we can conceive of contradictions. And therefore, it's going to be something which translates as some rule of his character. You cannot interact with the character. As simple as that, man. Fiction, at least the truth maker for fiction, is the intentionality of the author alongside the conceivability thesis. Like, I feel like these are all simple responses that even a third grader will understand. Respond, please. Come on, man. And to answer your question, Tron, look, I'm fine with Tensei judging. I'm fine with Careless judging. Yeah. Maybe even official. Zenny judging. I'm fine with Wagu judging. I'm fine with Hermes judging. But yeah, go ahead. And also, yeah, by the way, I don't know who you are, Virtual Intensities. I'm pretty sure that's Flow. If that's Flow, I fuck with you. But I only agree to Tensei as a moderator because I'm not sure how to moderate.
nigga.
Okay, then I'm not sure who that is.
Yeah, that's just
Oh, that's Chaos. So that, I'm not sure if I agree to Chaos as a moderator, so I'm not sure why he abused me if that was him. But go ahead.
All right, thank you. So the first problem I have is the modal machinery, right? He said that the impossibility is both logically necessary and metaphysically necessary, right? Those two things are obviously not the same claim. The logical necessity is the truth across all logically possible worlds there, right? And the metaphysical necessity, it simply depends on like the nature or essence of the object.
I agree
So
to
which
understand
modal
which slots
system, why is
everything.
he interrupting me? Why is he interrupting
Because I
me?
was clarifying.
Why is
I
he
agree to
interrupting me? I don't care about your
Well, it's fine.
clarification,
It's
you
fine.
fucking
Just chill.
faggot. Mute this
When
nigga.
did I
He
say
literally
what?
fucking shotgun for years. I'm about to shotgun the fuck out of this nigga. So listen, my bad. So listen, anyways, right? So if he's saying it's a logical necessity, right? Then obviously he'd have to show that an abstract, when he says some abstract thing or some abstract being cannot lose, is logically entailed. I'm gonna obviously ask him for that. Please keep that in mind. So that obviously clearly doesn't really follow from like logic. We would say just logic by itself there. So if it's a metaphysical necessity, then obviously the claim would depend on the theory of essence there. So is he using some form of Crippian like essentialist like kind of view where like I guess well that Crippian view would probably say like, oh, like there's certain properties are necessary like to the object there. Like if that's what he's saying, okay, like what? Like if he's also saying, oh, maybe like he'd have to explain like the abstractness entails the immunity to defeat there. I don't even know what the fuck he means by that, right? That just doesn't really make the connection, like that connection isn't automatic, right? And then obviously the second problem I have is the abstractness doesn't really imply some form of non-interaction. I don't even know what the fuck he means by that. Like he's asserting some form of thing that, oh, because the being is atemporal and aspatial, right? It can't undergo change and therefore cannot lose. I don't know what the fuck that means. It doesn't even follow. Like many philosophical accounts of these things or treat abstract objects as causally inert. So, but I don't even think, I don't even like, that doesn't even matter. Like that really, it does matter, but like, it's just really ridiculous that he'd say that, right? But that only like really means that they do not participate in some form of causal like processes there. Like it doesn't really mean they automatically like defeat anything interacting with them. You'd have to like bridge that gap as well. And obviously, honestly, at that like the matchup is just undefined or even irrelevant. I'd say like not that like the abstract entity would just win. I don't even know what you mean by that. Obviously, so like you still need a rule like that turns the causal isolation into some form of victory in a battle condition, right? And the third problem I had is the cross-verse translations that you were having. You were translating the cross-verse and you were translating the fiction, and I didn't understand anything the shit that you were saying properly because you claimed that the rule holds some form of across like all fictions there because fiction is the imagination. Like that's just a definition of the domain there. Like it doesn't really show that like every fictional ontology respects the same interaction rules or maybe some different fictional systems explicitly there. Like we would include entities that like interact with abstract structures or maybe concepts or maybe like the metaphysical or the mathematical objects, right? So like without any like fucking cross-verse evaluation principle of that sort, I don't even think the property remains in some form of dominant in every verse. That's not supported. You haven't supported that claim. And honestly, I forgot the last thing. I think was he talking about analytic truths? Yeah, I think you're talking about analytic truths. And honestly, my contention with the analytic truth when you're using analytic truths, you keep on invoking the analytically true, right? That your character really cannot lose, or it's impossible for him to lose, right? So, because like of an abstract of his nature or whatever. That's obviously that's part of the definition there. Like if it is the case, like if that's the case there, right? Then the statement just reduces to some fucking stipulation inside of your character's description there. Like, and the stipulation only really guarantees something like within the own narrative framework. I don't even know if you can actually like traverse that anywhere else. So I don't think that automatically binds comparisons, any parity, or whatever may be the sort, right? Because the entities defined under like different frameworks there obviously probably have some different qualities to them, right? So I'd ask you the simple question to end off my tangent. Like what principle even connects the properties, like the property that you were saying necessarily abstract and unchanging to the conclusion that you say, oh, it cannot lose, or your character just cannot lose in any fictional matchup or fictional parody, fictional comparison.
Damn, why taking y'all so long
Man,
telling me?
if Stacy, just her turn up, baby. Yo, one, please, Hermes, screenshot that poll and send it to me in DMs. Secondly speaking, whenever you said that I was shotgunning you, I was just responding to all your points. You can never prove that I had the intention to overwhelm you. That's what a shotgun is. And I don't grant that a shotgun without intentionality is something which is fallacious. Or thirdly speaking, whenever you ask why it's logically entailed, I already explained why it's logically entailed. It's the case that if my character is abstract in virtue of one of the features in which is obviously consequentially going to be applied to you due to your abstractness, it follows that it's impossible for you to lose because losing is a temporal term. It means to describe a state of affairs in which is actualized correlated to you not actualizing the goal in mind, which it actually leads me to my next point. You were sidestepping and not trying because the position I gave overarchingly was that my character would not lose. I never said that he defeats anybody. I never said that he was the victor of the battle. I just said that he doesn't lose. You fucking retard. In response to the other points that you made, all you did was say that I didn't justify anything. Like, that doesn't mean I didn't justify anything. I want you to explain how anything that I said was wrong. Even if the points that I gave weren't justified, you didn't explain how they were wrong, even though they were definitely justified. Another thing is, whenever you talk about causal inertia or why my character will be causally inert, that's something which is true of abstractness, accidentally speaking. Like, or my bad. That's something which is going to be true of abstractness, like 100%. Like that literally is necessarily entailed if my character is abstract given the definition that I gave. Another point is that you can't understand basic claims. The analyticity point was talking about, at least relative to fiction, was talking about the true maker for potency, you fucking retard. So it's the case that the conceivability thesis is the potency maker for fiction. It's the case that if something is conceivable, then it's possible for fiction. If something is inconceivable, then it's impossible for fiction. It's the case that contradictions seemingly are not conceivable, therefore seemingly they are impossible for fucking fiction, you fucking retard. And interactive power with an abstract being due to the fact that they are atemporal is something in which is impossible. You cannot conceive of contradictions. I want you to justify that you can imagine a contradiction right now. Go ahead. I'll also explain why it's the case that, please listen by the way, but I'll also explain why it's the case that my character is abstract. I know you didn't question it because you can't track, but I'll still explain it so you don't have any rats or low tiers, which are called your friends who are biased for you, even though you're getting destroyed. Low diff. Hold on, let me get the scan, man. And then just clearly to finalize why my character's abstractness translates to the hypothetical verse and all verses, independent of some narrative rule in which is limited, it's the case that I'm using a character in which has features. And then if those features is something in which the character is in possession of, due to the fact that I'm using the character and taking them within a hypothetical verse, which is against all of the rest of fiction, obviously it's the case that those features are still going to remain true of my character. Abstractness is a part of his essence. That's not something which is restricted to the verse because the conceivability thesis allows for it to translate into the hypothetical verse and every other verse. Like, for example, abstractness can be true of any other verse. That's not the point. But if it's the case that both of our characters are abstract, let's say, for example, you were taking Naruto, then it would just be incon. But guess what? If it's inconclusive, then my character did not lose. So my position is ultimately justified. That's why you have to track. You can't listen to debates with your toes or your asshole. You have to listen to debates with your ears and respond with your mouth. You fucking retard. Turn your brain on and listen. Track up, dumbass retard. And then finally speaking, before I explain the argument, it's the case that whenever I talk about essence, I'm just talking about the set of all your features. I don't really care to engage within any other philosophical position because there are multiple retarded philosophers. You have people who attempt to be philosophers and spouse out shit that they don't know about. Like, for example, you who can't even pronounce regular positions. But yeah, just to clarify, there existing philosophical positions in which disagrees with me, seemingly speaking, does not mean that my position is incorrect. You would have to explain why those positions are reasonable, logical, true, cogent, anything. But yeah, so essence is just talking about the set of properties that someone has, which includes accidentals and essentials. I know that a lot of people disagree with essence including accidentals, but I'm not someone who disagrees with that. I'm fine with essence including both accidentals and essentials, and it's the case that it's the case that that's what I'm talking about whenever I invoke the word essence or nature. And just to clarify, because you didn't want to accept my clarification when I interrupted you, that make you look less retarded than you already are making yourself look. It's the case that the logical and metaphysical modality are distinct, but just to clarify, logical modality does govern metaphysical modality because the reason why it's a contradiction for you to be able to perform an action which is outside of your capacity is because there exists a logical contradiction in saying that you're able to perform an action. However, there's no property in which instantiates the ability to perform an action. And then a metaphysical impossibility is just talking about some impossibility in reference to your nature. It's talking about some incompatible action. For example, some incompatible action relativistically to your nature. So let's say that, and this is just an example, let's say that you can only walk if you have legs. Obviously, it's the case that it's metaphysically impossible for you to walk if it follows that you lack the legs to do so. So yeah, the property is going to want to instantiate the capacity for some feature, or it's going to want to instantiate the employment of some action X. That's what metaphysical compatibility is talking about, or metaphysical potency. And then I'm just going to send a scan explaining what I was talking about. Like, I thought this was pretty simple, but I guess we have Lotes here still in the com. What the fuck? Hey, Zenny, do you have an invite to my scan server? Never mind, I'm in it. We can conclude soon. Like, I'm not trying to spend the rest of my night amping low tiers on basic shit. Don't unmute them yet. I'm not done explaining my scam.
I got you.
Thank you, man. Thank you, man. Look at chat, everybody. Let's get it. So yeah, this bitch, and I already know what he's gonna rat and say, so I'm just gonna precog the argument and respond. Hopefully he's not gonna use the argument that I'm gonna precog because it's really, really retarded, or the question I'm gonna precog. So it says, don't tell me what to do, FN. My bad, bro. It says, but his opponent is a transcendental entity beyond physical reasoning. Transcendental, if you search it up on Oxford, means that he's either spiritual or non-physical, but it's an inclusive or. And the reason why I believe it's talking about both is because they are stated to be spiritual in the verse. That is the plane of existence that they reside on, quote unquote, reside on, quote unquote. And then directly after it says physical reasoning, at least within the verse, they attempt to use logic as a way to describe reality, and reasoning is identical to logic, at least in the verse. So whenever they say physical reasoning, they mean physical logic. In other words, the physical language, I apologize, the language that we use as an attempt to describe someone physically speaking, he can't be described physically, and he does exist, meaning that he's non-physical. Yay. And if he's non-physical, that means he's aspatial, atemporal, because I don't grant metaphysical change exist. And then also it's just stated that he's atemporal. But what was your response? Go ahead.
Okay, so firstly, the very first thing I want to respond to is obviously I want to recapitulate his argument. Essentially, the first part, he said that his character is abstract. Secondly, he said that abstract beings are causally
Never
inert
said
and
that.
non-temporal. Can you mute yourself?
My character's true form is abstract.
You're a fucking retard. Can you mute yourself? Can you mute yourself, little guy?
Yeah, I
Somebody
got
mute
you,
him?
man. I'm sorry for interrupting you. I apologize, Dan. I'm gonna let you look retarded. Like, I really wanted to help you, but go ahead.
Okay, so anyways, right? So, and then he thirdly say that losing is like some form of temporal state of affairs. I think that's what I heard him say. And he said, therefore, his character cannot lose, right? I don't think that inference really works. I think that inference only works if I were to grant his theory of loss there. I don't know what his theory of loss there, or his theory of abstract objects, right? Or and obviously like his cross verse transfer rule at all there, right? all at once. But obviously I do not. The first thing that I really reject is on the logic point there. Like he keeps on saying that, oh, it's logically entailed. I don't think it is, because at best all I'd say is it's conditional. Like it's conditional on his definition there. Like the logical entailment just means the denial is contradictory, right? Obviously, but but there's just no contradiction in saying, oh, an abstract character fails to secure any like victory conditions in a matchup there, or maybe an abstract character cannot causally affect, or but also cannot causally, or also cannot like meaningfully even participate in a convention there, or confrontation, right? So obviously that's just a form of contradiction. That obviously, I know, I mean, obviously that's not a form of contradiction, right? So I don't even know why he keeps on overstating the definitional baggage or the definitional packaging there as logical necessity. The second thing I really reject is that simply like his move onto the atemporal and to like cannot lose there, where he's saying his character cannot lose. I think it's invalid unless I were to grant, or unless like losing is defined by like exclusively as like some form of like temporal alteration, or alteration of like the target there, right? Like, why should I even grant that? Like, in a versus discourse, I say losing can be even broader, like, could even be broader than, like, the undergoing internal change there, right? Or, like, maybe a ring out, or maybe a stalemate under some form of resolution standards, maybe, like, some form of battlefield removal, incapaciticity, or, like, the effect of the opponent there, or maybe some, like, failure to even meet the win conditions, right? All of those things can count depending on the framework, of course. So to specify, like I'd say you'd have to like specify like the defeat relation. What is the defeat relation? And if since you haven't done that, I'd say until then, like when you say losing is temporal, that is just a stipulation designed to even like designed for some fucking bullshit and some rhetorical emphasis there, right? The third thing that I reject is that obviously he keeps on saying, oh, inside of the framework, or he keeps on hiding inside of this weird type of shit where he says, oh, he never said he never said he wins, or or you said he didn't lose. I think that's fine, right? But that still doesn't save you in terms of what we're talking about. When you say does not lose, it needs a truth condition to that. That needs a truth condition. Like, is that like some universal non-defeat across all matchups, some form of immunity to all hostile interactions, maybe some impossibility, or the possibility of a draw, or some inconclusive outcomes that count in your favor of the conversation there, right? You obviously have to pick one of those. I don't know if you can even have both. That'd be really weird. Because if that's the case, then if your standard is just, oh, inconclusive means, oh you didn't lose, then I don't think your claim even has any weight anymore, because it's just massively weakened from that. So now you're just simply talking about, you're not even establishing the superiority in there. That's what I would think versus battles would even entail there. So you just keep on saying, oh, your character is hard to resolve against, or your character just cannot be beaten, or he just does not lose. That is not the same thesis as some form of universal non-loss in any robust sense there. That's just a fallback. That's just you fallbacking there to the criterion there, right? And obviously you sent this scan. I didn't really look at it. Let me look at it real quick. Where did he send the scan at? Let me look at the scan. Let me scroll up. Where's the scan? 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 Where's the send the scan in chat, bro? Send a scan in chat, bro. Send a scan in chat, bro. Send a scan in chat, bro.
Bro, I'll just send it for him, bro. Look, this is the scan.
Does he think I'm gonna listen to what he said?
Okay, so listen.
Oh my God.
Okay, so listen. Your description of the scan essentially was, obviously, before we even get to the scan, I have a lot of other things I really want to fucking attack even before that, right? This is in virtue of the scan, obviously, but you said like capacity goes into contradiction. I think that's what you said. Like you said, oh, if a being lacks the property that instantiates an action, I was writing it down. Like if a being lacks like the properties to instantiate an action, then like performing that action is just logically contradictory. I don't think that's correct. I hope that's not what you said. I don't think that's correct, because simply all I'd say is that obviously that's not correct. Like I don't even know what you meant by that. I don't even think that's what you said. If people are saying I didn't track that, I don't think that's what you said. So, I mean, I'll move on from that. You said the abstraction goes into non-interaction, right? Like, I think you're treating the abstraction there, or the non-physicality there, as some form of like, as if it automatically implies some total interaction immunity. I need you to justify that, because that just depends entirely on the specific metaphysical theory or abstract objects there, or of abstract objects there, of course, right? So like some views would say treat abstract entities as like causally inert, and then others would say even like the conceptual or the non-causal relations with them there. So, like, without even like defending a particular metaphysical model there, like the inference where you'd say, oh, the abstract goes into nothing, can't interact with it, I don't even think that follows. And the third thing that I really have a problem with, like with this scan, is like the non-interaction, and you're saying cannot lose there, right? Even if I granted that like the causal inertia there, like I don't even think that that doesn't really entail like a non-loss. I don't even know how you're connecting the dots between those. I need the bridge for that because it only really means that the entity does not participate in the ordinary causal processes there. I don't understand what you're saying. So in the matchup framework, that could possibly yield like a different outcome, like a lot of different outcomes. Like for example, like we can say the opponent really cannot even affect the entity, or maybe the encounter is like not even resolved, or maybe it's irrelevant, right? So none of those automatically equal some victory or some universal non-loss. I don't even know how you bridge that gap. Like all those things simply show in my eyes that the interaction model is undefined. And the fourth thing I have a problem with is the transcendental slash like non you had like some term transcendental like non-physical description of what you were talking about there and the processes there. Like the scan that you're quoting explicitly by virtue of that, like this doesn't make any sense. All that shit establishes as I'm looking at it now is that the character is described as beyond physical description or reasoning within the verse there, right? All that shows is that the character is non-physical relative to some form of narrative framework there. It doesn't really establish that the same ontological rules govern all fictional systems there. And the fifth thing that I have a problem with, obviously, is how you were speaking about cross-verse and how this would transfer. And your claim is literally centered around the claim that it obviously still requires some form of rule explaining why a property defined inside of one ontological or ontology binds every other fictional ontology. Without that rule, I don't even know how you're even coming to the conclusion of anything in your argumentation there, or whatever you're saying that verbiage, the utterance is there, right? The argument would only establish there that something about the character inside its own framework relative there. So the unresolved, it's all unresolved there. So what principle even guarantees that the non-physical or abstract status prevents defeat in every possible fictional matchup that we can be even conceiving or talking about there, right? What if I say I have Goku? What prevents the matchup there? What prevents defeat in every possible fictional out matchup, like in reference to Goku and Dragon Ball, whatever, right? You said fictional verses, like, obviously in connection to that question, I'd say like rather than merely even preventing some form of ordinary causal interaction within like a specific ontology, like until you even bridge that, and until that bridge is justified, until you like even reveal the bridge there explicitly or maybe even implicitly, you reveal that bridge. I don't think the argument even moves. I think the argument moves from like a property of the character directly to some form of universal outcome without even like you're not even showing the outcome like has to follow or must follow or whatever may be the case there. I'm done.
Okay. One, I explain how my cross-verse theory is true, quote unquote. Two, whenever you ask for my theory of loss and you said that you're not sure of my theory of loss, I have a conventional one. I don't really care about your idiosyncratic one. All it means to lose is for your goal, at least the goal that you had an attempt at performing or actualizing, all it means to lose is for that goal to not be actualized or failed. Or in other words, that desire to not be actualized. So it's the case that my position seemingly is just, or simply is that my character will not lose. So the conditions for the justification of that position can be the fact that there's an incon or that he wins. But I'm saying that in virtue of the possession that my character has, it's the case that analytically there must exist an incon. That's just true through my analyticity. You didn't respond to that at all. Then also, I agree it depends on my semantics. However, it's the case that my semantics are something which is used within a verse. So whenever you're talking about the systems of codification within a verse relative to how, oh, he could just be non-physical in the verse. Yeah, I'm fine with that. However, space and time exist within a verse, and both of those things are true of non-physicality. I apologize, physicality. That's just something consistent. So if it's the case that you're saying it could be relative to the verse, I'm fine with that. However, the narrative principles in which it will be relative to exist in in literally every single verse. So that's kind of irrelevant. Like, yes, I agree the verse is the truth maker for his abstractness because it's stated within the fucking verse and it's shown within the fucking verse. But it doesn't respond to anything. You're fucking retarded. Also, can you guys please stop deleting pose, man? Can y'all please stop deleting pose? I really want to use it against this retard after he loses no diff.
You want all of
but
them, bro.
You
have
want all
five
of them.
polls
yeah, I
with
just want
15 and
yeah.
out.
But yeah, in response to the other thing, it doesn't even have to be the case that losing is a temporal term that we're invoking when it comes to a state of affairs or describing a state of affairs in which are actualized. It's just the case that it's impossible overall for him to have interactive power due to the lack of space and time that exists or that is present in response to the other claims, man. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the polls, free. Thank you for the polls, Hermes. Anyways, whenever you talk about a universal condition or explain how that translates, all the responses that you gave are just question begs. You didn't justify anything that you said. I want you to justify everything that you said. When it comes to logical modality, yes, I did say it's the case that obviously logical modality is going to want to talk about what is codified, what's compatible, what's incompatible with the laws of logic. But it's the case that the reason why we say that something is logically impossible, like for example, God's existence is due to the lack of a feature within reality that instantiates his existence or the capacity for his existence. So yes, logical modality, I can say, is in tandem with metaphysical modality, and both of them are referential to features specifically. We're going to want to say that something is logically impossible if and only if it's the case that there is some machinery in which does not employ the capacity for it to exist. So, for example, I can say that Tron cannot eat, but the reason why he cannot eat is because he doesn't have a mouth. So it's logically impossible for Tron to eat. But the only reason why it's logically impossible for Tron to eat is because he has some, or I apologize, there exists a lack of something which is required for him to have the ability to eat. And that's just trivially true. So I'm not sure what your response to that is. And all that means to say is that metaphysical modality and logical modality are kind of talking about the same thing there. Like I said, metaphysical modality is not as concrete as like epistemological modality or, you know, all these other modal scopes. But just to clarify response to everything else, whenever you say it doesn't entail the non-loss, you need to justify that. That's a claim. You're just asking questions and then you try to slip in claims that you know you cannot defend. I want you to justify it doesn't entail the non-loss. I also never said that my character has a victory at all or it's irrelevant. I don't care about your shitty Goku example. That's not something of which is true. You're just repeating your point. Justify that. When it comes to the lack of causality being relative to the ontology, the lack of causality or being acausal is something which is high order. It exists independent of some layer that you're talking about. No character can interact with an abstract being because being abstract analytically entails that there exists a lack of interactive power, because I don't grant physical change for one, and two, interactive power entails temporality, which my character is atemporal. So obviously there's going to be a contradiction metaphysically and logically speaking if it's the case that my character possesses the abstracta. Now, you keep on trying to bring up this point that you know you cannot defend because it's really, really retarded. Stop mentioning how these philosophers posit these views regarding the abstracta, because typically the philosophers are not talking about fucking fiction. They're talking about the abstracta in regards to fucking reality, which is the state. I apologize. They're talking about the abstracta in regards to reality. And then just to clarify real quick, I don't care about what a philosopher says. I care about what I say. I'm not here to convince you either. I care about what I say and what the judge says in consideration of what both of us say. Okay? So I gave my description of the abstracta, which is applied within the verse. It's described to be that way in the verse. And this is something which is true of my character. I'm taking a specific character, so obviously it's essential to my character, or else I'm not taking that character. That's why I'm taking this specific version of the character. I said that my character's true form is abstract. It's translated to the verse because of how abstract works, or abstractness works. Alongside the truth makers for potency within fiction, it is logically necessary for this to be true and interactive in terms of translations. It has to be translated to all verses, you fucking retard, okay? And then, just to clarify once again, you dumbass fucking bitch. It's not a rat, retard. But to clarify once again, you stupid dumbass fucking bitch, okay? And I'm going to say this again because you keep on trying to stand on this shitty ass point. Nobody cares about a philosopher that disagrees with my view of the abstracta. I don't care if Einstein, for example, says that you can interact with the abstracta, because Einstein doesn't describe the abstracta in the same way that I do. Concepts, in other words, abstract entities, are things which are unextendable, unchanging, eternal, etc. They're acausal, like you said. There are obviously philosophers in which agree with me as well. But you, who listens to the Booty Network, you shitty fucking retard, the Booty philosopher, obviously gonna have retarded views, you stupid bitch, okay? So I want you to explain why anything that you said is justified, and can we please conclude? Like, you keep on repeating yourself. And just to clarify something real quick, for the scan, we understand that typically within fiction, there are more statements that are true in comparison to statements that are false, especially in Berserk specifically. So there's some inductive power as well for the statement being true and taken to be, or I apologize, and why it should be taken to be hyper literal. And then, yeah, man, can we please conclude? Like, you didn't explain why my character has nothing that I said he has. You didn't explain why anything that I said is wrong. You just kind of questioned everything, like kind of, which unreasonable. I don't really care about your questions. Seemingly, there's no burdens on me. I'm dismissing all that. But you tried to clarify, or just to make this noticeable as well. Like he says, I don't disagree with, or I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. And what I would say to that is that I don't agree with that. Like, there's so many blunders, bro. There's no fucking argumentation. It's just rat. Can we please force conclusions? I don't have all day. Like, please.
Is he
Do you
done?
want to conclude?
Is he done? Okay, so anyways, I'm gonna respond. So anyways, could you mute, please?
Mhm.
Somebody mute. Can this guy mute? Thank you. Good boy. So listen, all you're saying is like three
Okay,
core
I'm
things.
not muting now. I don't know why you tried to do that after
Somebody
I,
mute this nigga. Somebody mute this
nicely muted
nigga.
myself.
Somebody
Oh
mute
no.
this nigga. Thank you, fucking bitch. So, anyways, so listen, there's three core things that I have a problem with, right? He says losing is the failure to actualize the goal, and he also says like his character is abstract, atemporal, and non-interactive, right? So therefore, like there must be like an inconclusive outcome, so he does not lose, right? So, anyways, right? So going further, right? The first problem is that his loss definition is goal relative. I have a problem with his loss definition because it's goal relative. He said that losing means a character's goal fails to actualize. I have a problem with that. I think, well, actually, fine, right? Okay, then we would say like immediately, like even if I were to say fine to that, right? Like then we would say immediately, like that, like we would immediately need to know like what your character's like goal is in the matchup there, right? What is your character's goal in the matchup? I don't even understand what your character's goal in the matchup. Like if the goal is something like even defeating the opponent or affecting the opponent or resolving the conflict or like then honestly I don't even understand what you're talking about, right? You can completely some form of non-interactive abstract entity could also fail that goal. That also applies to your character there, right? So in that case, the outcome would be mutual failure. I don't even know how it's guaranteed some form of non-loss. So like the non-loss result doesn't really follow from abstract.
This nigga fucking stupid, bro. Oh my god.
Just a common in many fictional ontologies. I think that is right, or I'd say that is right. So his inference is not analytic in the strict sense. It's just conditional on like his chosen metaphysics of abstract entities. The third problem I have is that his cross-verse rule is still asserted and it's not justified. He's simply just asserted. He didn't justify it. He claims that the property transfers to every verse because fiction is imagination and contradictions are inconceivable. But that only shows contradictions cannot occur. It does not show that every fictional ontology must obey his specific interaction rules about abstract beings. A fictional system can coherently define relations to abstract structures without contradictions there. That possibility right there is all I need that blocks the universal non-loss claim that he's making. The fourth problem that I have is that he's saying it's inconclusive, meaning, oh, he didn't lose. That just weakens the thesis. I don't think that even makes the thesis any stronger. It makes it weaker because he said, oh, an inconclusive result also counts towards his position there. That just means that the argument no longer even establishes some form of universal dominance or superiority. It only establishes that the character might produce unresolved matchups, and that's okay. Is that what he's saying? That's like that makes the matchup, or that makes it much weaker than the claim, oh, cannot lose to any fictional character. So the central gap that he's having with his argumentation there is that why must abstractness guarantee some form of or an inconclusive outcome rather than simply just saying, oh, creating a scenario where neither side can satisfy their their victory condition.
I'm even finished.
Okay, so obviously there are multiple blunders, but one is that the thesis makes the thesis itself weaker. Just to clarify, the thesis itself is that he will not lose. You said that he will not lose that claim, or in other words, that thesis makes the thesis weaker, which already gives extra evidence for the fact that you're not fucking tracking. In response to the second thing, just to clarify, the unresolved matchup is due to the abilities presented by both characters. So that's why it's unresolved. And that would, okay, you have to control yourself. But that would be the evidence for the position that I named, which was simply that he will not lose. Thirdly, you said that it was possible. I want you to justify it's possible. Fourthly, you tried to say that that isn't what we're talking about conventionally whenever we use cross-verse standards. I don't really care. One, I don't even know if that's true. You have to justify that. Secondly speaking, I don't really care about what we conventionally talk about since I named and clarified my position 10 times. Like if you want to duck and weave out of the discussion now because you realize you didn't track, quote unquote, then that's completely fine, but at least admit to it. In response to the other shit, I want you to explain the difference between imagining a circular square and then imagining a character in which is abstract but is able to be interacted with. Explain the difference. If it's the case that you cannot explain the difference, then seemingly even you agree, but you're just writing, even you agree that there exists a contradiction in the second point. And it follows that obviously we cannot conceive of contradictions. So I want you to justify that we're able to conceive of a character in which is abstract being able to be interacted with, losing, changing anything. And then in response to the other shit, yet obviously given my semantics, it's a contradiction because we're talking about potency. So it's the case that potency only exists if there are features in which employs potency, or in other words, machinery in which employs potency. Something is not possible if it's the case that there's no machinery in which employs its potency. We say that God possibly exists because there's some fact of reality in which allows for his possible existence or his potent existence. So I'm not sure why you bring up that non-response. And then also, just to clarify, this is a really, really large blunder. It's not about the goal of the characters. It's about the goal of the debaters. What does the debaters believe, or what do the debaters believe? I'm saying that I believe my character wins. So my goal, I apologize. I'm saying that I believe my character will not lose. So my goal is that he doesn't lose. I don't want him to lose. And what helps instantiate the actuality of that goal is the features in which is possessed by the characters. So it's the case that the characters don't possess the goal. It doesn't matter what the characters possess. I'm saying that because of, or in other words, in virtue of the features my character possesses, it's the case that I have a goal. And I want to actualize that goal within a hypothetical verse because I believe you have the incorrect position, which would hypothetically be, this is just hypothetical. I'm not saying this is your position. Naruto beats Femto, for example. I'm saying that because I disagree with that due to the features in which my character possesses, I'm going to name a goal in which I have when it comes to justification. And the justification is through the analyticity in which is named already, which obviously you didn't track. And then finally, whenever you say it can be undetermined, yeah, if it's undetermined, that means that he didn't lose. If by undetermined you mean it wasn't resolved and he wouldn't lose, and then if by undetermined you mean epistemically speaking, it's the case that in virtue of the analyticity in which exists, it has to be the case that the features employs the ability to not lose. So that would be justified already. But look, there's no argument in which was given at all. You just repeated yourself and said that I was going circular, and you asked questions like this isn't a Q&A, this is a debate. Like, come on, bro, you can't use the justice trust. Like, it's basic shit. Like, justify everything they said. Like, but yeah, man, let's conclude, please, bro. Like, come on, this is going
I
on
was
too
about to
long.
say, bro.
All right, so
Before
let
you
me
respond,
respond to what you were saying.
no, 10. Before you
No,
respond, bro, you just conclude.
my bad. Okay, who said that?
Me, bro. Before
No,
you
I don't care.
respond,
I
bro,
don't
do
care
you
that.
agree to
So I don't
conclude,
care
bro?
that.
Yo, Tron, can you
Anyways,
please force conclusions? Like, I'm not trying to be here all day, bro.
I was
For all
about to
that.
say.
Obviously,
I'm
this
off
is
my back listening to this nigga 10,
but
bro.
just to clarify, like, people have a confusion of what a moderator does in this calm, like in overall debating calm. A moderator isn't just there to mute and unmute; they're there to progress the debate or make sure that things go
Bro,
smoothly.
where is
So we can
Tensei, bro?
ask. So
No,
Tensei, I have a
good, bro.
question real quick. Tensei, or whoever the moderator is currently, is it okay for you to force conclusions? Because obviously this is not going anywhere. You can't track.
Tron, force conclusion.
Like, I feel like he's just now figuring
Look,
out my
10.
position.
So listen,
10.
can I
He wants to
respond to
conclude.
this? Goodness
Me and
gracious,
Tron were modding.
that is. Wait, don't you think that's supposed to be above with both debaters there? Goodness gracious.
Okay,
No,
okay.
that's why it's called
Yo,
forcing
yeah, but
conclusions.
you've been
Like
ducking the
Infinity.
fucking
Look, can I talk
conclusions
to
for the past
free,
2
free,
points.
free, no
Wait,
just
disrespect,
calm
free.
down,
What are you
Tron.
No
talking
Just calm
disrespect,
about?
down.
free.
10.
Listen, no disrespect, free. Can I talk to Tron? Like, you dead ass or bugging right now. I don't
You're
have a
being
problem
a
with you
fucking
outside of anything
bro.
else, but you were acting
Bro,
like a
listen.
dickhead. I don't know why the
What
fuck.
are you
You
talking
said let's
about?
conclude
Yo,
at the beginning of the
Yo,
discussion.
Dirtly, you
yes,
don't do
that's
this
what I'm
shit.
talking. You're the one that said let's
Wait,
conclude. Let's conclude after like the first
And
5
then he realized
sentences. What are
that
you
he
talking
did
about?
this nigga 10
Like,
not just say
this is-
let's
Yes, he
conclude at
did,
the
and then he
beginning
got
of the
his fucking
discussion?
ass beat, and
So
now
what
he
did
doesn't
you
want to
say, Tron? I
conclude
can't
and wants to
hear you.
keep fucking
You
shadow
faggot.
boxing because he knows he's
Like
gonna
that.
lose, bro.
This is-
Just shut up, bro. Bro,
free
shut
chill.
up, bro. I'm tired
All
of
right,
it.
hold on. Calm down, calm down. Look,
Bro,
Hey,
go to
Kid,
Castle
are you
Black.
cool with
by the
him
way,
getting his last
Secret
response
Eye
and
and
then concluding?
friends are still going to find a way to rank him above me on the tier list, by the way. That's all they do. But go ahead, respond.
What?
Yeah, it's like the
Respond
TikTok
to Tron.
kids.
Yeah,
10.
I know. Like, come on, bro. Like,
What'd you say,
10. Like,
Prince?
are you fine with this being your last response? And then you can
but wait, just to
conclude?
clarify, like, if he gives something new, I'm obviously going to respond. But
Yeah.
can we conclude now? He's the one who wanted to conclude at the start instantly. Then he realized he didn't track.
You're unmuted, by the way.
I said conclude. This nigga rejected the conclusion. Obviously, that's what
Correct.
happened there. I rejected that. I
Yeah,
obviously did not.
correct. How does that
I'm not
respond to what
talking.
he
Can you
said?
answer Tron's new question?
I disengaged from that. Did you guys not hear me say, "Oh, I would take that back"? Because I thought you
Okay,
said
but
something.
That had nothing to do
Yeah,
with my
that's
question.
You agree to
How does that have to do with anything?
Like, what the fuck is going on? So listen, Tron, I
Look,
literally said that shit.
Well,
but the fact
10,
that
I'm not
people
forcing you to
fucking
conclude. I'm asking you a question. Just calm down. I'm asking
Yeah,
you.
no, I said that. I agreed with your question. Yes.
Okay.
This is my last. I said that multiple times. But faggot.
Okay,
kept on
well, that's
interrupting.
your
Alright.
last response. Okay, Tron, you heard that, right?
So listen,
Okay.
shut the fuck up.
I heard
Listen,
you, Infinity. I heard you.
Why am I getting permission to constantly call the retard in
No,
here?
we're not
Nigga,
giving
dick
conclusions.
riding.
This is his
Chaos
last
is
response.
trash, too.
So,
So
look,
listen,
if he adds some
somebody
new
mute
shit
this
in,
nigga.
he's just going to
Somebody
respond
mute
to it.
this- Can you
Yeah, I
mute
was
this
gonna
nigga,
say
please?
10.
Can you mute this nigga, please? Can you mute this
I'm
nigga,
not
please?
speaking.
Can you mute this? I don't give a fuck, faggot. Somebody mute this nigga. Goodness gracious. Bitch ass nigga. Anyways, right? All he says, his thesis is that his character will not lose. I confirm that. I grant that that's your thesis. you're defending that thesis by saying that firstly, your character is abstract, atemporal. Secondly, your character, the abstract things cannot be interacted with. Thirdly, the interaction is required for defeat there, and therefore loss is impossible, and the result must be inconceivable or inconclusive, not inconceivable, inconclusive, or victory, right? So, or let's take out victory entirely because you don't even like that word. The abstract there does not equal interaction and possibility by logic. You keep on saying that it's logically contradictory for any abstract entity to be interacted with. I don't think it is, because a logical contradiction, it would look like a square circle and A is not A, right? Or A and not A. So, but when you say an abstract entity can be interacted with, that is not a form there. It may contradict your choosing definition there, but not definitional incompatibility. It's not the same as logical contradiction there, obviously. I think you understand that. I hope you do. So the fiction can coherently define systems where the conceptual entities interact with agents, or the mathematical structures influence events, or the narrative abstractions there affect characters. Nothing about that produces any type of formal contradiction. I don't know where you're getting that from. So the premise where you say, oh, the interaction with abstract beings is logically impossible is not established there. You haven't established that claim. You haven't justified that. And your semantics don't even bind over other fictional systems there. You keep on saying, oh, given your semantics, or given my semantics, it's contradictory. Right, given your semantics, I grant that, given your semantics. But your claim obviously ranges over all fictional characters. That means that your semantics would have to govern every fictional ontology. You're claiming that your character cannot lose to any other fictional universe or any fictional verse or whatever may be the case. That's your first fucking proposition. That's your proposition there. That's your thesis. So listen, it's not just that one character comes from there, right? Obviously, and you haven't shown that. At best, all I can say you've shown is inside your framework, abstract entities cannot be interacted with. And that does not entail that across all fictional systems, abstract entities cannot be interacted with. So the inconclusive outcomes there don't even automatically secure your thesis there. It doesn't license your thesis there. The inconclusive, you're saying if inconclusive, then therefore your claim is true. But your thesis isn't some matchups are unresolved. Your thesis is literally, your character will not lose to any fictional character, any fictional universe. You didn't even say character per se. You said any fictional verse, any fictional universe across all fiction. That's what you said. So to defend that universally, you would need to show no possible matchup produces the defeat in the question there. Pointing out that some matchups could or be inconclusive doesn't even establish that the stronger universal claim there. Then your conceivability equals possibility claim is just a rule. It's not a heavy. It's just trash as fuck. Because you're arguing, obviously, you argued that contradictions are inconceivable, and so fictional possibility tracks conceivability. I don't agree with that. The principle, that principle alone, there, I don't even think that doesn't even give you the conclusion that you would want from it. Like, because even if contradictions are impossible, let's say, right? Like, it doesn't even follow that interaction. It's not the case that it follows that interaction with abstract entities is contradictory. You haven't licensed that. You haven't even proven that. I don't even know what the fuck you're saying there. So you still need to prove that step specifically. You need to prove that step specifically. Right now, all you're doing is just asserting it. I don't need to see the machinery under that. And the key gaps still remain in your argumentation. Your whole argument literally depends on the abstract, the interaction impossibility, or interaction is impossible, and the defeat is impossible. Obviously, right? But the first thing that we're talking about from abstract to interaction impossibility is not logically demonstrated in your argumentation in the things that you've been saying. And the second thing from interaction impossibility to defeat impossibility, or the interaction impossible to defeat impossible, right? The second arrow that we would go from there, like let's say we have an arrow from the abstract into interaction impossible and an arrow from defeat impossibility. That arrow there, the second arrow, it depends on how the defeat is defined in some form of matchup framework there. Until you bridge that gap and until you actually justified that gap, rather than even just repeating it there, all you're doing is repeating it. The argument does not establish the universal non-loss claim that you're making there. Why is quote unquote interaction with an abstract entity logically contradictory rather than we would say merely some form of incompatible with your chosen metaphysical definition? We can conclude short.
All right, let me unmute this nigga.
Okay, so as a response, did you have something to say?
Wait, why is he responding? Wait, why is you responding to that?
Yeah, he
Conclude.
did not track. That's how you know he didn't track. Just to
Why is you
clarify,
responding to
what
that?
you,
Can you
I'm sorry, can
conclude?
y'all please mute
Why
him
are you
because I was
responding to
reading
that? Can you
instantly.
conclude? Why are
Yeah,
you
so to
responding?
answer your question, the reason why I'm responding is because what you agreed to is that that was going to be your last response, which was something emphasized. And I knew you wouldn't track that because I emphasized it 5 times. And obviously, via your prior interactions or our prior interactions, there obviously is some like brain issue that you have. So I don't really want to talk too much about that because you can. Exactly, Hermes. So, one, I want you to justify every single claim that you made. I want you to prove you exist. I want you to explain why there exists a reasonable case for any of the burdens in which you tried to lay upon me. I want you to justify that any of your questions have reasonability between it. Additionally, just to clarify, the contradictories employed are the contradictions employed off of the nature of my character. So we're going to want to say that because my character isn't subject to change, or in other words, in the translation, my character is atemporal, that means that you cannot manipulate him because to manipulate something means that you change it, meaning that they go from X and Y to, for example, just X or X and Y to example X, Y, and B, which is a form of change, or in other words, that's a form of temporality. You're experiencing temporality. You cannot destroy it because that means that they go from X, which is existent, to non-existent, which is Y. That would be change as well. You cannot destroy it because obviously that would be the same thing as the erasure shit. And then interactive power, seemingly speaking, is going to be something which is power by definition. Like that's tautological. Interactive power is power. Yeah. Power is something which is temporal. Yeah. Power is created by energy. Yeah. And obviously, he's not spatial. He's aspatial. He's atemporal. I don't know if you know anything, but if you search up the definition of movement, it's changing physical position within space. Interactive power, most forms of interactive power require movement. And if they don't require movement, they require some type of temporality overall. So it's the case that due to both of his features, which is him being aspatial and atemporal, there's going to be a lack of the interactive power that exists. Another thing is whenever you say that unresolved, just to clarify, whenever you say that unresolved, it's not right, by the way, you're retarded. Whenever you say unresolved, if you're talking about epistemically unresolved, I explain how it's impossible, like it's epistemically impossible for us to have a lack of knowledge. I apologize. It's epistemically impossible for it to be unresolved in terms of the battle because of the features in which we 100% know that he has. So off of what is known, at least the systems of codification in which rules the hypothetical verse, off of what it is known, it is the case that there's an epistemic impossibility for the like it being unresolved. However, if you're talking about unresolved within the battle, as in the battle's inconclusive, yeah, that helps my position. Yeah, that's the point. And then whenever you talk about the strength of the claim, that's kind of irrelevant. There's no argument for that. Whenever you're talking about the principle, yeah, the conceivability thesis is something true because of the definition of fiction, which there was no alternative definition gave because you realized that you would not be able to argue on semantics with me, you fucking retard. So all fiction is, what you didn't disagree with for some reason, all fiction is imagination, meaning that you cannot implement within fiction things that you cannot imagine. And then obviously if you cannot implement within fiction things that you cannot imagine, then the conceivability thesis is true because all the conceivability thesis is going to want to say, at least the soft conceivability thesis, all it's going to want to say is that something is possible if and only if it's the case that you can conceive of it. Something is impossible if you cannot conceive of it, or if it's inconceivable. All you did was explain how there's a difference between, or you tried to say, you didn't even explain it, you just said that there's a difference between imagining a circle square and then imagining a character in which is atemporal that can experience interactive power. But the point of contention is whether or not you can even imagine it. I want you to justify at all that there is any asymmetrical complexity between the two. I apologize. And whether or not there is a distinction between the two, that's the claim that you made, but you didn't actually justify. You just kind of repeated yourself. That's probably a question bag. I don't know if you learned that in the TikTok com. You can search it up on Google. A question bag or circular reasoning is vicious. Search it up, please. Like you learned this in second grade. They teach you what fallacies are. And then just to clarify, defeat is the same as loss. I believe that someone is defeated if and only if it is the case that there was a goal in which was attempted to be actualized, but the goal wasn't actualized. And then the goal will obviously be the one that I have, which is for him to not lose. And it's the case that in virtue of the features he possesses, it's impossible for him to lose. So yeah, man, interactive power is something which is impossible to exist between some abstract being and some other abstract being or some physical being because of the nature of interactive power. But the entire point is as long as interactive power isn't something in which allows you to change the character, then I'm fine with interactive power being something in which is invoked onto my character. If it's the case that interactive power is using or is met idiosyncratically. If it's the case that interactive power is not talking about any type of change or any type of anything on my character, then the interactive power would just be irrelevant to the battle, which causes my character to win. So yes, this is something true of my character. It doesn't matter the relativistic semantics as long as it's the case that this is true of my character. That's all I need. So they can call it fucking poopy pants Bradley or some shit like. They can call it stinky breath, anything. They call it deodorant. It doesn't matter what they call the character or what they call the ability. All we need is for the description. I apologize. All we need is for the features to be true of the entity I'm talking about, in which they are true. And we know that it's obviously epistemically justified that the features are going to be translated due to what the features are. They exist independent of the mind. The definitions are mind dependent. The words are mind dependent. But the features itself, in which the definitions are referential towards, obviously are something in which are mind independent, meaning they're translative. Like this is simple. Like, we learned this in first grade, like I said. But look, seemingly there was no justification for your point. The conceivability thesis obviously entails your loss. I explained what atem pro means. I explained what abstractness means. Just to clarify real quick, I feel like you just learned of my position 30 minutes into the debate. So you weren't even tracking originally speaking. And then to send the argument to make you understand simply, I'm just gonna have ChatGPT formalize it because you're really retarded. And obviously you were going off of Gemini AI arguments. I was mistaken. I thought you were using ChatGPT Pro, but considering how retarded your responses were, obviously that's false. So this is what ChatGPT says. To make it simply. Premise 1, my character does not abide by change. Premise 2, any instance of interactive power necessarily invokes change. Premise 3, if something invokes change, then it cannot apply to an entity that does not abide by change. And finally, conclusion, the thing you've been waiting for, you fucking retard. Therefore, relative interactive power does not exist for my character. Yay! Okay? Now, I've explained it to a retard. I've used retarded terms. My character cannot abide by interactive power. You cannot invoke interactive power. So you should be able to understand now. And that would be my conclusion as well, I guess. Everybody heard what was said. So
Jesus.
GG's, you suck. You're the worst debater I've ever debated in my life. But
All right, Tim, bro. Give the conclusions, nigga.
but nah, he's gonna add something new. That's what all the
Add something
losers
new?
do. Yeah,
All
I mean you
right.
can give a conclusion if you want, but don't add anything new.
All right, bro. If you add something new, but we're not gonna count that shit, bro. I'm not gonna lie, bro.